All right, everybody. Welcome in. GC Live. I am Chris Clark. As you notice, I'm a little bit bigger on the screen, and I'm solo today. Wes Mitchell has left me, not for good, hopefully, but he has left me for the day to go off, and as my grandmother used to say, go gallivanting all over the place. So we're going to give Wes Friday off, Free for All Friday here, although it's not officially named that here on GC Live. I'm going to roll through this show solo, but I think hopefully for you guys and gals that choose to join me today, it'll still be a quite enjoyable time. Got several different things to get to. I've got a little bit of a topic, a question that I would like to throw out to the crowd here. Hopefully some of you people will show up in the chat. Maybe you saw that I would be solo. I did advertise that a little bit. Maybe you saw that the star of the show, Wes Mitchell, is not here, the host, the producer extraordinaire, the brains behind this operation. And maybe you said, you know what, I can't do it, Chris. You're too much, you're too little, whatever it may be. And maybe you decided that you are going elsewhere for your 2 p.m. hour here on Friday. But if not, I do hope that you join me. And I hope you stick around here for a while because we got a few things to get to. Like I said, 2 guests, first and foremost. Couple guests here on the program. We are going to have Collyn Taylor from GamecockCentral.com, obviously show regular, our fantastic beat writer on GamecockCentral.com. He's going to be joining us, and he's going to talk about baseball. The Mississippi State Series is coming up this weekend, obviously a big one for the Gamecocks. We say that every week. We always joke about that, but it is now that they're down here to, getting down in terms of how much they've done this season, the amount of games that they played, how deep they are into this SEC slate. Very important series at home against Mississippi State. So I've got an admission. I know the least about this Mississippi State team as any team that South Carolina has played, and that's just due to my own busyness level with football, recruiting, the site, different types of things. I do know, whatever the record and things like that. But hey, that's why we have Collyn on. He's going to give us some insight into this team, some insight into the matchups to watch for this weekend. Maybe he'll give us a little bit of a prediction of what he thinks happened, what he thinks is going to happen, what's going to ultimately unfold. And another guest that I just sort of rounded up very last minute, which I appreciate, Dennis Thomas. That's going to be, if you don't know who Dennis Thomas is, he's a former Gamecock lineman. He actually played O-line and D-line for the Gamecocks from 1997 to 2000. So sort of a cool perspective there because he played under Brad Scott and Lou Holtz and was on the 99 team that was very, very bad and the 2000 team that ended up being pretty good and nationally ranked by the end of the season. So he was there for that turnaround. And another cool perspective that Dennis has, he's got several different angles that's really cool. He coached under Steve Spurrier. He was a grad assistant, so he was an off-field guy technically. So he worked very closely with Brad Lawing, the sort of legendary around these parts Gamecock defensive line coach. He worked around a ton of talent on that defensive line. That's what we're going to go through some of those names and have Dennis maybe tell some stories. And then he got into coaching himself. He was an on-field coach for several different programs, Garner Webb, Western Carolina. He's a Greenwood guy. He was born in Calhoun Falls, went to Calhoun Falls, I believe, but spent some time at Greenwood High School, was around when Kelsey Quarles was getting recruited from Greenwood, for those of you who remember him. So we're going to have Collyn on about 2:15, about 2:30. We're going to have Dennis Thomas on. Kept in touch with Dennis over the years, so really looking forward to seeing him. And what's up, everybody in the chat? You guys showed up a little bit later. I guess you decided to give me a pity listen today because Wes is not here. So that is much appreciated. And of course, it's a lot of the, as Tyler Rice says, the true fans. Thanks a lot, Tyler. Appreciate you coming in. Trey Daniel, disagree, not too cool. But thank you for being here, man. And of course, our man Gamecock Russ and Travis Edwards, some of our regular listeners here. So much appreciated for you guys being on board today. If there's anything you want to talk about, if you've got any questions that you want to hit on, before Collyn comes in at about 2:15, go ahead and do that. Now, bear in mind, I'm doing everything here today I'm putting up. I'm not eating lunch like Russ is right now. I already took care of that. That's too late for me, Russ. My man Kevin Roche, who I hope you're listening today, Kev. He knows what I'm talking about. He makes fun of me for eating lunch at breakfast-esque hours. But I am running the other things. I'm running the board, so to speak. So I'm putting up your comments. I'm doing any little transitions. I'm getting our guests on. I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to give everybody attention. So the point is, bear with me. We also have another little side angle, and that right over there earlier today, I was sitting here working on my computer, and I heard a little buzzing noise. Somehow or another, a wasp, which is one of my greatest enemies, was over in sort of the blinds over here. And I thought that I had dispatched him, killed him. He fell on the ground. I was right in the middle of something, had to go do something else. I was sort of saving him for later to go pick him up, dispose of him. Looked a little while ago, he's gone. So hopefully he just wandered off and crawled in a hole and died. But if not, the point is, you see me run out of the screen, out of frame, screaming, there's possibly a wasp there, lurking in the shadows. Hopefully not. So anyway, if you got any questions, send them on over. There's already a couple that we might cover here. And if we get time, guys and girls, I may throw out a little bit of a question that I want you to be thinking about. We may carry it over for a few shows. I may take it to GamecockCentral.com to pose it on site and all those different types of things. So before we get to the meat of the show, again, a lot of ground to cover. GC Live, as always, is brought to you by Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. Make sure that you hit him up, ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. He is our primary presenting sponsor here at GamecockCentral.com's GC Live. For Chris and Wes, we really appreciate it. We really appreciate him being on board, and we'd appreciate it if you guys, hit up Clint. If you have any, maybe you don't know if you should refinance. Maybe you have no idea. You don't know. Maybe you don't know what your interest rate is. Maybe you don't ever look at your mortgage bill. Maybe your house is already paid off. If so, that's awesome. You want to look at getting a rental property. Whatever it may be, hit up Clint. Any of your mortgage refinance needs. He's excellent at it. ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. So let's hit a couple questions first. I might get to the little question I wanted to pose to you all. I might not. We'll just have to see how it goes. Aaron Riddle. What's up, Aaron? Recognize you from this site and Twitter at times. I want to talk about Joey Hunter and the impact he can make if healthy. He looked good in limited snaps the end of the season, one of the only upsides to the secondary. Yet Joey was at times in spring, he did miss some time because he was battling. He was one of those guys, one of those many guys who didn't have any type of serious injury, but he just had something hampering him. And then towards the end of the spring ended up, I think, being able to return back to practice. So he's always been a really intriguing kid. Wes and I actually got to see Joey Hunter in a camp setting when he was coming out of high school. He was a kid from Georgia that was sort of a late bloomer. He didn't get a ton of recruiting attention, but a lot of the coaches around that area really liked him. He played at Sandy Creek High, produces a lot of talent. They typically have some Division I guys come through at Sandy Creek. Rashad Amos is another one that came out around that same time as Joey Hunter, but he's a kid that's got some length. From a skill set standpoint, he can probably play any of the spots that you want because of that size, and he's got some coverage ability. He's not going to be elite in terms of speed, straight line speed, but he's a guy that's got some range. He's a willing tackler, and he's got some upside. I think that was a good word to use just in terms of the upside, the potential there. And obviously, South Carolina, you look at their numbers, they need to get healthy. They need to get some more guys on campus this summer that are going to be able to help out there. Isaiah Norris, Ladarian Craig, Wes Mitchell just posted an update, by the way, on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com that sort of breaks down what we know about when some of these summer enrollees, by the way, a couple of those guys that I mentioned are among them, are going to be on campus. But Joey Hunter, of course, has been on campus for a while, went through spring drills, what he could, battling the little injury. And I think is certainly going to have a guy that's got every chance to make an impact this season. Reed Monroe with another question while we're hitting a few questions here. And again, we got 5 minutes or so before Collyn Taylor comes on. throw in a question if you want. If not, I'm going to probably throw one out to you guys. But any word on the defensive guy we're trying to get from the same school as Braden? I think you only asked me that, Reed, to try to get me to say his name so I can butcher it. I'm going to give it the best run I can. Tomiwa Darajier. I think I got that right. The first name I definitely got right. I've heard it from his high school coach before. I told him, look, I'm just going to get you to say it because I'll probably butcher it. So he was kind enough to give me a good pronunciation. Tomiwa Darajier. I think I messed up the last name a little bit. But, yeah, he's really, really interesting kid. Because you look at him, he's 6'5" or so, the 250 range. And his profile is such that he could play, outside. He could play that sort of 5 technique, sort of end look. He could maybe be a 3 technique defensive tackle in the interior there. It just depends. And skill set standpoint, he's got the ability to do those things. He moves really well. He's a great kid. He's one of these sort of students of the game. And I've been a little bit surprised that he hasn't picked up even more offers. I think is maybe one of those kids that if we had summer camps last year, may have carried a higher profile into this summer and this season. But he's fairly advanced in the recruiting process. He's definitely not rushing things, but he's got a couple visits this summer scheduled. Arkansas's one, Georgia Tech's one in June. South Carolina's obviously been involved. He rolled through Columbia for the spring game. The Garnet and Black game, he was in town for that. Sort of, again, a self-guided tour that was still in the dead period. And haven't heard of a follow-up official visit scheduled at this time for the summer, for instance. But I think there's a good chance that'll probably happen maybe the next time Braden Davis hits campus. Obviously, he's teammates with 4-star quarterback commitment Braden Davis. So we'll see when he gets back on campus. I'm just going to start calling him Tomiwa because the first name's a little bit easier. But this is a kid who's got some interesting talent. He's one of several defensive linemen that South Carolina is in the mix with. We rolled a piece recently on GamecockCentral.com sort of outlining the Gamecocks board on the defensive front, the interior type guys. And they're in on some guys. Some of them they've already got scheduled for officials in the summer. Some of them they'll probably get in this season. But he's definitely in that lot. He's somebody that they've got certainly, I think, a good shot with. He has taken his time with the process, though. Here's something I want you guys to think about a little bit because we do have a couple minutes before Collyn comes on. Hopefully he will be here. I shot him a message earlier. Looks like everything's good to go. And again, forgive me if I have to pop out for just a second just to return a message or something like that. But, yeah, Collyn will join us. Here's what I want you to think about here. I don't know why I started thinking about this other than there's been a decent amount of excitement around the Gamecock football program. And obviously that's extended into some other sports. You think about baseball this year, beating Clemson a couple times, 2 out of the 2 games so far. There's one more to go this season. You think about some of the stuff that's happened in baseball. You think of the run for Gamecock women's basketball to the Final Four. That was certainly exciting. And then the Shane Beamer era starting, some of that positivity, some of the excitement, the fact that we're going to have more people in the stands this year at football games inside Williams-Brice, that's something that people are excited about for the most part. Being a little bit more normal in terms of game atmosphere, recruiting coming back. So there's a lot of excitement. So the question that I would like to pose to you guys, listeners, is what are maybe the 1 or the 2 or the 3 more exciting moments since you've been a Gamecock fan that you have experienced? And it could be something that you've experienced watching it on television. For instance, it could be, the first national title game for baseball, or it could be, hey, landing Jadeveon Clowney. That was the most exciting thing. Or it could be going to Atlanta for the first time in football in school history. That could be it. But throwing that out there, just give some thoughts about that. Throw them in the chat. Think about them. If we get to them later in the show, we may get to them. And now I'm going to bring on, to save me from myself, Collyn Taylor from Gamecock Central. I neglected to do my producer duties and make sure that you could hear me, Collyn, but I assume we're good here.
We are fantastic. I can hear you loud and clear.
Very, very nice. All right. Appreciate you joining me. You are a regular guest here, of course, on GC Live, but flying solo today, so let's have some fun with it.
Do it.
First of all, hey, I'm going to loop you into this. We're in a different space than our listeners, readers, viewers, whatever you want to call it. But you probably heard one of the things that I wanted to get into in this show as just a little bit of a fun topic. And I think maybe we'll do something more with this on site, Collyn, is just with some of the excitement that's built around football, things returning to normal, just some of the more exciting moments in history, all sports. And so obviously a lot of people are going to be able to come up with some of those. What are some you'd throw in the hat from even just something cool you covered, cool moments or moments that you recognize that you just saw from fans that they were meaningful, exciting?
Yes. The 2010 game is unreal. I mean, I was in the stands for that one. That one was one of the first times I'd hear there's a funny family story that comes with that game, but there's some other stuff that's come up. You know, I've been covering them now for goodness how long, forever it feels like. But the Jermaine Couisnard buzzer beater is one of them that I was in the stands for that I get to cover, which was kind of cool. And I've gotten to cover super regionals. The super regional at Arkansas was probably one of my cooler moments, just from a media perspective, getting to cover the game. But Jermaine Couisnard's buzzer beater comes to mind. I'm trying to think of some other ones. The Outback Bowl was fun to cover from my perspective. So there's a lot that we get to do that's pretty daggum cool.
Yeah, it's sort of almost silly sometimes that we get to do this for a living, and
I'm still
maybe actually we might go into that a little bit because I do want to talk about baseball and those different types of things, but sometimes I get in these little moods where I want to do a little retrospective, so maybe we'll do that. But did want to throw this up: Louis Antonelli, SC versus UGA 2012, great one, and Collyn, I think. Within that game, there are a lot of great plays for South Carolina. Obviously, it's 35-7. Georgia didn't score until the late in the fourth quarter when it didn't matter. The Ace Sanders punt return in that game that was one that I thought of when I thought of this topic. And in terms of most exciting moments in Gamecock history, that play is probably one of them. The Ace Sanders punt return, probably the loudest I've ever heard the stadium at a game I've been at. And if there was a roof on the place, it would have been off. And Louis also talking about the Elite Eight win at the Garden. That was definitely one that was good. So a lot of the same ones sort of coming up there. Beating Bama, the Clowney hit, Devin Downey versus Kentucky 2010, and Gamecock Russ bringing up the Ace Sanders punt return as well. So lots of those moments. Y'all keep thinking about them. And just save them, and we'll do something with them maybe at some point in the future. But Collyn, I want to dive into the Mississippi State game, or series. They're going to play more than one game. Mississippi State series. I was telling the folks earlier, I'm definitely going to lean on you more than ever here. I've looked over, Mississippi State statistically, what they've done, but tell us a little bit about this matchup, just big picture view. How does this series line up for South Carolina from a matchup standpoint?
Yeah, these are two teams that are pretty identical when it comes to how they want to play. And Mississippi State's just done it better at times this year. They're a little bit better offensively, but South Carolina is probably better from a holistic pitching standpoint. South Carolina's pitching numbers are a little bit better. Mississippi State's offensive numbers they're both pretty comparable, but one's better than the other. Mississippi State has a little bit better average, a little bit better slugging percentage, but they're a really, really good team. They have a lot of talent. Tanner Allen and Rowdy Jordan, who is all SEC name team. His name is Rowdy. Lead the way offensively, and they have a really good bullpen arm. The name escapes me right now, but really good bullpen arm and some really good pieces in that rotation that are young. So South Carolina's going to have their hands full. They've tried to shake things up a little bit to kind of create some momentum and some mojo, and we'll see how it goes over the next 3 days.
Something that you said, I feel like, now correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds sort of similar to what you said when we were previewing the Ole Miss series, in that, if I recall, South Carolina's pitching numbers were better. Ole Miss had the better bats. Now, maybe it was a little bit more markedly so than Mississippi State. Is that fair? Or Mississippi State and Ole Miss, are they similar teams? I know they played. I believe Ole Miss took that series 2-3, or 2-1, 2 out of 3, if I'm not mistaken. But is that sort of about what to expect?
I would say, Ole Miss's offense is eons better than what Mississippi State's offense is. Ole Miss's offense is, statistically speaking, one of the best in the league. And Mississippi State's is just, it's very middle of the road in terms of just they're near the bottom of the league in average and slugging, but are pretty middle of the road and on base percentage, which helps them, obviously drive in runs that they need to drive in, but near the bottom of the league in runs scored. So South Carolina's near the bottom in all those offensive categories too. So and these are two pitching staffs that are, I think, first and third in strikeouts looking. So you're going to see a lot of strikeouts over the next 3 days. And it's a Mississippi State team that's largely predicated on timely offense and some really, really good pitching.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You think about any SEC team is going to have hitters, right? Normally they're going to be able to hit for power. They have guys that almost any of these teams, it seems like they're capable of going for 12 runs in a game, and you really don't think twice about it. But you look at South Carolina, for instance, and like you said, they're towards the bottom with Wes Clark and, some of these guys that can really hit. So it's just really interesting to see. And part of that, Collyn, might be because they're typically facing really good pitching, really good defense in the SEC. So here's the next question I'll pose. How many first-round draft picks, top 10 pitchers is South Carolina going to face this weekend like usual? Is there one this weekend, or are they finally spared from that?
They're spared from a guy in the starting rotation this week that is going to be a top 10 pick. So that's huge for them. Now, some of the freshmen might be top 10 or first-round picks in upcoming drafts, but now there's no projected top 10 guy.
You never know if that's even a good thing, because you think about some of these old South Carolina teams, back in the 2010, 2011. It's like, okay, well, South Carolina's going against this first rounder, and on the other side, Blake Cooper. Nobody wants to face Blake Cooper. He locked people down. So I don't think it even matters if it's necessarily a first round talent. It's just, like you said, really good pitching from top to bottom for this team.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their stats right now, and I'm trying to find the name of the guy. Landon Sims is his name. In SEC play, he's got a 0.49 ERA and a 117 batting average against. So that's their closer. So you better, if you're South Carolina, you want that lead in the 6th, 7th inning, because it might be hard to come back on them when you have that out there. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's going to be tougher against a guy like that. And this is going to come down to what offense is going to be able to scrap across more runs. Mississippi State has been fantastic this year. They've only lost, I want to say, 1 or 2 series all season, and the rest of it's been sweeps. This is a team that is, I think, 22-8, 22-9 in quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities in the RPI. They're 22-9 and are 11-1 against quad 2 teams. So this is a team that has beaten good teams before, and South Carolina's going to have their hands full, and you hope that some of the tweaks that they've made to the rotation and to kind of their approach in the lineup pay dividends, and you start to see some progress as you get into SEC tournament and NCAA tournament.
Yeah, so a couple of things for you on that. Tell us about some of these tweaks that we may see, that the fans may see, relative to what we saw against Arkansas or Ole Miss maybe, and how that could affect things.
Yeah. So the big one's obviously the starting rotation. Thomas Farr moves to Sunday, and then Brandon Jordan and Will Sanders move up a day to Friday, Saturday, just to get, statistically, Jordan's been your best guy on the weekend in SEC play, and Sanders has been really good too. So you move those guys up, and then you hope that especially if you split the first two, you have a Friday night arm stuff-wise in Thomas Farr on the back end, and there's not that pressure on him to be the Friday night guy. So that's kind of the big one. And then you saw some lineup changes. with Brady Allen moving down to the 3-hole on Wednesday, Braylon Wimmer hitting leadoff, Colin Burgess in the 2-hole. My guess is you'll see some variance of that tonight at least, and they'll kind of judge how it goes from there, just because Brady's been your best hitter, and now it's about getting him some more RBI opportunities for him in the lineup. And they're focused more now. They kind of went power happy after beating Georgia, beating LSU, and beating all these good teams, and now they're trying to get back to, line drives and hitting doubles and trying to get on base and scrapping and clawing with 2 strikes to put some pressure on a pitching staff and put pressure on a defense, and have a little bit more, even if they're out, competitive outs, which you really haven't seen over the last 2 weekends. You're muted there, Chris.
Look at that. I was just thinking, I was trying to look at something on my computer.
You were pitching a perfect game in the 6th inning, and then all of a sudden it
totally blew that. I totally blew that. It's gone way too smooth. It really has, in my opinion. I think it's gone pretty well trying to do everything. And I was sitting here looking. I wasn't looking at you. I was looking at a screen to make sure I had the TV info right. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think I'm muted. Why would I have muted myself? So I'll just start talking without looking at the screen. Backfired.
We've all been there.
Always, kids, always make sure that you're not muted. You got to double check. But tonight, Mississippi State, South Carolina, 7 p.m., Founders Park, SEC Network. Plus, Wes Mitchell's not here to give one of his great tutorials. But again, ESPN app, use your Roku, Fire Stick, Smart TV, all sorts of that jazz, and go find that game against Mississippi State. So, Collyn, zooming out a little bit, after this series, which is obviously a big one, like we say every week, a midweeker against Clemson, at Clemson. You have another midweek sandwiched in between another SEC series with Appalachian State later, but your 2 SEC series left at Kentucky and then versus a Tennessee team that has been probably better than expected this year. So I asked you this last time, probably after both the Arkansas and Ole Miss series, and it was a disappointing result for South Carolina. It's changed the equation a little bit for them in terms of postseason outlook. What does a series win do to change the equation this time around for South Carolina if they can capture it?
It'd be massive. I mean, it would be so important for them because so the way the NCAA is hosting this year is next week they're going to announce 20 sites that are still in the running for being a host. So if you're a program that has aspirations of playing home games in the NCAA tournament, you want to be part of that 20 on, I think it'll be Tuesday, they'll announce all that stuff. So South Carolina's right on that line. They're not a host right now, resume wise. They're probably in that 20 to 20 range, maybe. So you got to win this series if you want to stay in the hunt to host and at least make the first cut of those 20 teams. So it'd be huge. South Carolina needs a win. You have Ole Miss and Florida both. I know Florida lost last night to Kentucky, but from a overall standpoint, you have both of those programs trending up from the host perspective, and South Carolina trending down at this moment. So if you're South Carolina, you really need to win this series to keep that fight alive to host. And if they don't win this series, and it's going to be a very uphill climb, even if they are one of the 20 programs that are still in the running after the early part of next week.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, and you look at it. I mean, you're right. Need to win to get this one, and then, but flip side, if you can do that, then you think about going to Kentucky, win a bowl series, Tennessee, another tough series, but it's at home. If you can get the last 3 series, then you probably feel pretty good, right? And that's from that standpoint. But
and it's a log jam. I mean, it's an absolute log jam. I mean, I was talking to some people, and Arkansas is definitely going to be a host. Mississippi State's definitely going to be a host. Vanderbilt, Tennessee is more than likely, going to be a host. So that's 4 teams right there. And then the SEC is not going to get 7 hosts more than likely. I mean, it doesn't seem. So you have 3 teams in South Carolina, Florida, and Ole Miss that are probably fighting for 2 spots or even 1 spot. So it's a very log-jammed final 3 weeks, and you might get some more clarity after this weekend once you see how things kind of fall.
Yep, good stuff. All right, Collyn. So we are up against it where I'm gonna bring in our next guest, but I really appreciate it, and we're gonna do a little bit of more. I don't know, a little bit of just looking back, retrospective on things here soon. I want to do that. Just have a little chat about how you came up, how you've risen to your prominence in Gamecock Central. I think it's a neat story, and I think you, Wes, myself, like we've all got a little bit of that of just sort of some crazy stuff that happened or whatever. Just sort of getting really fortunate to get an opportunity to write about sports for a living. So so let's talk about that soon. Unfortunately, it won't be today. But I appreciate you coming on, man. Hey, thanks for everything you're doing at Gamecock Central, and we're looking forward to seeing your coverage tonight.
Awesome. Appreciate you having me on and getting to talk some baseball.
All right, man. Thanks, Collyn. That's Collyn Taylor from GamecockCentral.com. Yeah, thanks everybody for bearing in right there. And we are right up against bringing on our next guest. Coach Thomas, can you hear me all right? Give me a thumbs up if so, because you're not on right yet. All right, so we're going to bring in Coach Dennis Thomas. What's going on, Coach? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, we are rolling our guests in and out. So, sorry for that. Just got a lot of ground to cover in today's show. So, wanted to bring you on, and hey, thanks for doing this on short notice too. I'm flying solo today, but welcome into GC Live. We're just going to have a little talk, and I was telling people at the beginning of the show when we were sort of previewing you being on, I think you've got a really cool perspective about Gamecock country. Really, you just a lot of really neat experiences with it. You played at South Carolina from 97 to 2000. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So you played for Brad Scott and Lou Holtz.
Yes.
You coached at South Carolina at sort of the heyday of the program, the golden years, and then moved on to your own college coaching career. So I want to dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about how you got to South Carolina from Calhoun Falls, right? Originally.
Yes, I'm originally from Calhoun Falls. Played for head coach Jimmy Tao at Calhoun Falls, and ended up going and playing at the University of South Carolina. And once my playing career was over, I wanted to get into coaching. And so I went back to Calhoun Falls and started working at Calhoun Falls High School for Coach Jimmy Tao. And after my third year there, transitioned over and went to Greenwood High School and coached the defensive line for Coach Shell Dula over at Greenwood for 5 years. And how I got into college coaching, over at Greenwood, we had a lot of really good players. Had Kelsey Coors, DJ Swearinger. A lot of the Gamecock fan base is very familiar with those guys. And while coaching during spring practice, a lot of college coaches would come by, watch me coach, and pull me to the side and ask me, you should give this college football a go because you're teaching them some of the same things we are. And so I decided to reach out to Coach Brad Lowen, who was my position coach when I was at South Carolina, and told Coach Lowen that I wanted to get involved with starting my college coaching career. And luckily enough, they had a graduate assistant spot for me, and that's how I got started back at the University of South Carolina.
Yeah. So let's go to Greenwood. I remember I've known you for a longer time than I even realized.
Yeah.
Thinking about that today. And so, of course, DJ Swearinger out of Greenwood was the class of 2009. Mm-hmm. Kelsey, I think, was the 2010 class and then did the semester at prep school before he got to South Carolina. But so DJ Swearinger is always like a really interesting case study for me in recruiting, right? He was a 3-star guy. Mm-hmm. People thought that he was a good player. I will readily admit that he turned out to be significantly better than I thought he would be at the college level. Now that's on me. That has not, but did you know that DJ was going to be that special in college and then into the pros at the high school level? Like, did y'all get that sense from a pretty early age?
Yes. One thing at Greenwood, you realize when the kids come in from middle school and start entering their ninth grade year at Greenwood High School, when you see them coming off the bus, coming into the weight room for the first time, certain guys you just look at and you know they are Division I material, that they got their mind on, on the right things. And DJ was one of those guys. He came into our program and from day one worked really hard. Never had any problems with him from one of the workout, from an academic standpoint. He came from a two-parent home. Parents was really, really supportive of him. They would come to practice and watch him. And just his competitive nature. When he was at Greenwood, and of course at that time when DJ was coming in, we already had Josh Norman and some other guys playing in the secondary. And so for him to come in early on and play for us, I mean, it spoke volumes for him and the type of player he was for us.
And he played, from what I remember on his high school film, he was playing a good bit of quarterback, right? It was sort of like.
Well, DJ started out, he played defense for us, played safety for us.
Yeah.
And going into his senior year, we had some injuries at quarterback.
Yeah.
And so we went down and played West Florence. And so we put DJ at quarterback and just pretty much ran Wildcat with him the whole entire ball game and actually beat West Florence. And they had a couple of guys committed to Clemson that was really good D linemen. Malachi Goodman, and they had one more young man that was really good. So we ended up beating them. And Coach Dooley just kept using him on and off as a Wildcat quarterback. And so he could do a little bit of everything for us. So he was just a special player, and it was just a pleasure to coach.
And I think something I forget a lot is DJ's first year, he played a good bit at South Carolina and actually played corner, which is something. Yeah, and some people, wanted, and of course he ends up settling into safety, and the rest is history. But excellent player. I remember, DJ at Greenwood, y'all would always, you couldn't cut Hannah a break. You always had to beat Hannah. I don't appreciate that, but it is what it is. So now the other one that went on to South Carolina that I want to talk about, Kelsey Quarles, mentioned him earlier, 2010 class. I still remember the first time I heard about Kelsey, and I feel like it was Coach Dula that I don't know if I called him about prospects or maybe somehow he called me, but I think it was from him. And he said, I got this kid who's 6'4", I can't remember, somewhere between 250, 275, and was running the 100 in track.
Yes. Him and Sam Montgomery, they threw the shot putting discus for me. And then we would call it the fat boy relay during the track meet, but him and Sam would go and run the 4x1. And they never finished last. They always would finish, third or fourth, but they would beat some of the guys' regular relay teams, and they just showed the tremendous athletes, athletes they were. So it was amazing to watch guys that big that could run that well.
Sam Montgomery, for my most interesting kid I've covered, I'd say. He was quite a character. What
he was. Sam, Sam was a guy that loved joking. He loved cartoons, and so he was a player that self-motivated himself during practice by doing things in that nature to help keep the other guys pumped up at all times. So he was another one that was a pleasure to coach.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so I sort of went forward to, after your playing days, but to go back. So like we said earlier, you sort of had that coaching transition between Brad Scott and Lou Holtz. So I always have to ask people, it's just like with Spurrier, just like with Holtz, two legendary guys, I always have to ask people for stories and insight and all that. But what was it like for Coach Holtz when he first came in? Like, was there just this huge change? Like, what was the whole vibe like when Coach Holtz came in? How did things change?
Well, one thing when Coach Holtz first got the University of South Carolina, Coach was well respected. We all, as players, We recognized, we knew who he was from the first day he stepped on campus. I think the biggest thing I would take away from Coach Holtz when he first got there is just teaching us how to trust each other, love one another, and care for one another. And he made each one of us as individuals get up in front of the team and tell our background of our life and our upbringing and how did we get to the University of South Carolina. And you start to find out you really didn't know your teammates as well as you thought you did. You didn't know the things that they went through or why certain guys might act a certain way because of some of their life experiences. So I think that uh, first year it didn't go as well on the field, but we know we was really getting really good because we was getting close and we was becoming more or of a team and friendship and bonding with each other. And I think that next year you saw us, the program really took off up under him, but that was one of the biggest things that happened to us. It wasn't so much on the field, it's the things that he was teaching us off the field, how to become closer to one another and want to play for one another.
Yeah, and proofs in the pudding. I think it was 99, the rough year, like you said, 0-11. The next year finished in the top 25 with an 8-4 season. Any funny? This puts you on the spot a little bit. Any funny Holtz stories? Anything? Did he get after you a little bit? Any funny?
He got after everybody. Coach Holt's one thing about it. Everybody you were so afraid to mess up for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was almost like if he called you to his office, it was almost like he was walking to the principal's office. He's like, what's about to get ready to happen? But that's the part of him you respected so much is he knew how to get into your mind and make you want to come out the next day. Like he would call a player over to the side and say, "Good job, young man. You did a great job." He'll give him a little dum-dum candy, a little blow pop. And he like, take your helmet off, have your book. And you like, oh my, Coach Holtz is allowing me to take a break and have this blow pop. And then right before the end of practice, he would jump your tail and find something that you did wrong. But he knew the next day, it was two things you was going to do. You was going to come out the next day and really didn't care because he jumped you was feeling down, or you was going to really come back the next day and fight your butt off to prove to him that you could do it and you can do it even better than he thought you could. And I think a lot of our players did the second thing. They came back the next day and they really came out to practice hard to prove to him, like, Coach, I can do this and I can do it even better than you might thought I could. But he knew you could all the time, but that was just his way of reeling you in to make you feel good. And then, boom, dropping a bomb on you just to see how you was going to respond. Because he know in the game it's the same thing. You give up a touchdown as a corner, next series, or you going to come back and fight and make another play for the team.
Yeah. So culturally, do you feel like, I think that's sort of what you credit it to. Obviously, you got to have players to win, but do you feel like that was what really drove that big improvement? I mean, going from no wins to being ranked in the top 25 in one season, was that the culture shift that big?
I would say it was, because the coaching staff that we had really good Coach Holtz had really good assistant coaches. He really did. He had Coach Charlie Strong. He had Coach Gudikins, Coach Dave Roberts. He had really good guys. And we believed in what they was teaching us. And we could see the things was working. It was helping us, even though the results weren't there at that time. I mean, we went and got beat by NC State in the rain, and Vanderbilt, we was right there. And certain games, we was right there on the cusp of winning. And, Coach was a realist. He told us the honest truth. Every week he would tell us, we're getting better. It haven't clicked yet, but we knew it was a matter of time going into that next season that we was going to put it all together because of the bonding we had. We spent so much time together, from bowling, going out to eat, hanging out at the mall, just little things that a lot of people might like, how is this going to get you a win on the field? It did, because we cared for the person beside of us.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you remember anything? So that 2000 season, obviously the New Mexico State game that everybody will remember what happened there. But the next weekend was really significant. You get number 10 Georgia at home. Anything you remember about that game? It was 3:30. They're number 10 in the country, and you guys beat them, and I think really showed the progress of the program.
Yes. Well, the year before that, we played, of course, at the University of Georgia. And Coach, like I say, he was pretty honest. He knew they had a very talented team. He knew we wasn't where we needed to be at that time. But the next year, when we played them at home, he give us the same speech every game and the same prayer every game. So as players, you understand everything he's about to get ready to say. You can see it in your mind. You know what's about to come. And he looked at us in the locker room and he told us we're gonna beat them. We will beat them as bad as we want to beat them. And so just to hear him say that, knowing that everything so far that he had told us from the previous year to this year was, we couldn't say that that's not true. We knew it was true. And so the guys, we knew the work we had to put in, and we just went out and did it on a big stage in front of a lot of people, across the country. So it was a great win, and a great win for the fan base.
And then 2 weeks later, obviously, was the Fade game, Mississippi State, another top 25 win that year. Eric Henry now on the staff of Gamecocks. And I want to get to Shane Beamer's new staff. I've already kept you longer than I said, so I hope.
It's okay. I enjoy talking Gamecock football, so
for sure. So I am going to let you get out of here soon, but a couple other things I wanted to hit on. So I mentioned this earlier, the amount, going back to your own coaching career at South Carolina when you were a grad assistant under Brad Lawing, was the amount of talent that you got to coach. I'm going to read off some of these names. You'll know them, but just to remind the people listening, Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, Cliff Matthews, Travian Robertson, Clifton Gathers, Devin Taylor. It's a pretty good group.
Great group.
What were you thinking when you saw all those guys, most of them playing together, a lot of those guys on the same team, What was that like to be able to have that much talent on the defensive line?
It was great to have that amount of talent, and anytime you can get that amount of good D linemen together. But I credit Coach Lawing, because Coach Lawing, it didn't matter what the player name was, no matter how many stars he had. Coach Lawing don't care about that. Our big thing, and my big thing in coaching, as long as it was his, you got to develop guys. Clowney came in, number one player. He still got to get developed because he's not an already developed player. And so I think people look at the 4 and 5 stars and they think they're supposed to come in right away. The defensive line or any position coach, you got to develop those guys as time goes on. And I think that was Coach Lawing's biggest thing, that he's a great developer. Of course, he's a great eye for talent, but Coach is going to develop you. And if you came there as a 2-star, you're going to leave there as a 5-star by the way you play and your production. And so having those guys, me as a graduate assistant, it was great because Coach, he really did trust me. And so when Clowney got there, I'm just using Clowney for example. Clowney, Coach, he got time for Clowney, but we also got Melvin Ingram, Travian Robinson, and all the other guys. They farther along ahead. So staying out to practice, working with him, being with him in the dorm with his playbook. You have to do little things as a graduate assistant to get the guys caught up to the rest of the guys. But Coach Lawrence just pushed him. You make a play that you sprint to the ball, though. Even though you made the play, but did you sprint? So it's the little things that made Clowney and made Melvin understand, because you got to think about it. Melvin came from the linebacker spot. Mm-hmm. And so I never forget, Melvin coming down, and, Melvin, when I first got there, Melvin was like, "Coach, I was hurt the previous year, and the only thing I did was eat wings and ranch dressing." I'm like, "Man," he was like, "Yeah, I got my weight up though." I said, "Yeah, you did, man." But his point was, Melvin he knew he was very athletic,
Yeah.
And Melvin, he wanted to play in. He had to buy in. And once again, Coach Long did a great job of making him buy in to wanting to play on the D line and want to play in. But on third downs, we would move Melvin in. Coach Long would move Melvin inside the 3 technique. And of course, Melvin was like, Coach, I can rush him from the end spot. And Coach Long said, Melvin, let me ask you a question. Which is the closest distance for you to get to the quarterback? Playing in or right over the ball at 3 or playing a shade? And Melvin was like, yeah, you made a good point, Coach. 3 technique is much easier to get to the quarterback. I ain't got far to get to. And so just little things like that, making him buy in and want to move to a 3 technique and just showing, not too many guards in the SEC at that time could block Melvin at the 3 technique, but you couldn't double anybody else just because we had Devin Taylor, Cliff Matthews, and then Clowney when he came aboard, and Travian right there in the middle as the foundation, just pushing the pocket. I mean, it was sometimes on third down we ain't had to do nothing but just tell them just go do what you do. So it made the job easy.
I remember when Chad Morris, who was the OC at Clemson, told more than one high school coach that I've talked to when he was just going around recruiting. This was during the sort of the 5-game winning streak. And they would be talking about the game and why that sort of rivalry turned. And he would say, it's simple. Our 5 cannot block their 4. We just can't do it. And that's all y'all had to do a lot of the time was send 4. And that was it. I mean,
yeah, we sent 4. And I tell people, they ask why the South Carolina and Clemson, how did we have so much success while Coach Spurrier was there at that time? And I think it was 2 reasons. I think one reason, we had really good players in the state of South Carolina that we had on our roster. And when it came down to that game, you don't have to tell Stephon Gilmore, you don't have to tell DJ, you don't have to tell any of those guys, Marcus Lattimore, you don't have to tell any of those guys about that rivalry. They mind locked and they loaded and they know what they need to do, not only for themselves, but for the whole entire university and the fan base. And the second thing, the league we played in. We felt like we played in the SEC. It's a physical league. And, that's what from a defensive standpoint, that's what Coach Johnson, he preached to the guys. Like, we play in a physical league. And when you play in a league, and for our secondary, I just use them for another example. When Stephon Gilmore has to go against A.J. Green, he has to go against Randall Cobb, he has to go against Julio Jones, and then now you play Clemson and you go against Sammy Watkins. Yeah, most people would be like, oh, yeah, this Sammy Watkins but when you go against other top-rated players like that week in and week out, everybody starts just to become a normal guy. They're just another guy for me. So I think that was big for us, for our guys and their confidence.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, I did want to hit, before we move to Shane Beamer, the development. I think that was a great point on development, and even guys who were like Melvin, like Jadeveon. I mean, they had these different tracks of development. Those guys, though, I just want to get you to confirm this, even though that, I know y'all treated them all the same. They had to do some things that athletically you were like, man, this is a little different, right? I mean, a Melvin Ingram, a Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, that's not a normal guy with the things.
Yeah, they did things that make you say, wow, because you don't see that every day from guys, especially when you playing the defensive line. I mean, Melvin is so quick twitch. I mean, it's nobody single blocking Melvin is very tough, especially on the collegiate level. It was going to be very tough for anybody, just because of Melvin's speed. But Melvin had so much power. And I think that's when people always asking me about the comparisons of him and Clowney, they got different strengths. Clowney is very strong with his hands. I mean, he touch you on your back. You think he's touching your heart from your back. His hands, his grip so strong, and his physical strength, if a lineman ever get him in a certain way, he can escape it by just overpowering you. Melvin can do it either with speed or he can do it with power. And so they're 2 totally different type of guys, and And if you look back at the defensive line when Coach Long was there, one side was never alike. You had your Cliff Matthews and you had your Devin Taylor. They two totally different guys. Melvin, Clowney, two totally different guys. So as an offensive line, when you're going into the game, your guys got to really hone in, because when either or rushing you, they giving you so much difference that it's hard to say, okay, well, all these, they just do the same thing. They just speed guys. Devin was so smooth. Devin was like a technician. He good with his hands. He see things very well. And so just coaching those guys, I mean, it was just good just to be around so much talent.
All right, Coach, last thing for you so I can let you get out here and enjoy the rest of your day. So let's take it forward to sort of current era. And some of our, talks, as we've kept in touch over the years, I know one thing that you've talked about a lot is getting more Gamecocks around the program. Right? I mean, that's something that's being done now. But give me your take on the hire of Shane Beamer, like what you thought of it at the time, and just what you've observed so far of how he's built out his staff and the feel around the program.
Well, one thing about Coach Beamer, when I was there as a graduate assistant, of course, Coach Beamer was a part of the staff, and Coach Beamer, the players loved him. And he the best thing I can say is he treats everybody as just a person. He's a person himself. He don't let his last name, maybe, the outlook of people like, oh, that's Coach Beamer right there. No, he treats everybody the same. He goes and shakes everybody's hands. He wants to spend time with them. He's a family person, and he's a person that I look up to as one of my mentors. And no matter where he's been, University of Georgia, Oklahoma, whenever you call him or text him or whatever, Coach gonna get right back to you. And so, as a former player, and just looking at all the players he was around during our time there, they know he's a Gamecock. They know he's part of the family. He's one of us. And I think to the fan base, he's showing that. He's spending a lot of time. I look at a lot of the Twitter stuff and a lot of the videos of people taking pictures with him, but that's him. And so I think the program's in good hands, and I'm rooting for him because I know the type of person he is, and I trust any hire that he made with the staff. I trust him because he knows them, better than anybody else. And for him to think they should be part of the Gamecock family, I trust him 100% behind that. And like I said, all the players, they love him. That's why you see so many players coming back down. And especially during a time with the pandemic going on, and a lot of the players got their own families now and kids, but they feel like it's a must for them to come back and show their face and be around, because they know how special Coach Beamer is as a person, not only as a coach. He's passionate as a coach, and he wants things done the right way. And I think it's headed in the right direction.
So good stuff there, Coach. So parting question here. What's next for you? I know you've been in college. You did your stint at South Carolina for several years. You've been in college coaching. Any chance that we ever see you back again wearing the garnet and black, some type of role?
Well, I tell you this, anytime I view South Carolina, the University of South Carolina in Columbia is my second home. From Calhoun Falls, where I was born and raised, but Columbia is a special place to me. It's a place that, that's a place I want to see be at the top in everything. And if the call ever comes one day for me to come back to the University of South Carolina, I come back with open arms, because that's where I got my start. That's where I earned my degree. That's where I got an opportunity to play the sport I love, and also I got a chance to start my coaching career. And so anytime home welcomes you back, you got to go back, just because it's part of you. It's family now. Everybody around there, that's family. And so, I love my experience there, and I tell anybody that Columbia is, you won't find better people to be associated with than people at the University of South Carolina.
Well, Coach, I'm not going to make any promises here, but I do have to point this out. We had Patrick DeMarco on the show at one point after he retired from the NFL, and we asked him about coaching and if he wanted to get into it, which he did, and if he would ever think about going back to South Carolina. And he said that he really wanted to. He was looking into it, and not long after that, he was back. So maybe we spent existence on the show today.
That would be great.
No doubt. But all right. Well, Coach, hey, I really appreciate your time. Sorry I kept you so long, but I know I know you enjoy talking Gamecock football, and I really appreciate all the stories. Great stuff today. All the Gamecock fans listening definitely enjoyed it too. But we'll catch up soon. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Coach.
Have a good weekend.
Too. All right. That was Dennis Thomas, former Gamecock lineman and assistant coach under Steve Spurrier there, worked under Brad Long. You guys heard the list of all the different guys that he had a hand in developing at South Carolina: Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, Cliff Matthews, Travian Robertson, Devin Taylor, all sorts of guys. So hope you guys enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Always good to catch up with Coach. Great stories, great perspective, having, played at South Carolina under two different coaches, including Lou Holtz. He was a part of that 2000 team that, as we said, ended up with the big turnaround from the 0-11 season to ending as a nationally ranked team, then ended up going back to South Carolina to get his degree there during sort of the golden era of the program. Some of those players that I mentioned earlier, some big wins, the 5-peat over Clemson. He was there for most of that stint, and then launching his own coaching career at the college level. So really good stuff there. Appreciate all the comments that you guys made during the show. Travis, thanks a lot. Appreciate the tip there. Appreciate Coach Thomas coming on. And guys, we had a lot to roll through on the show today. So it was really good to see all of you there in the chat. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. We are already over an hour. We're at an hour and 3 minutes. We started right on time. Collyn Taylor had some great insight on the Mississippi State series. If you joined us late, go back, play it from the beginning, check it out. And if you missed part of our interview with Coach Dennis Thomas, you can also go back and watch it later if you're listening on the podcast. Appreciate you too. But hey, guys, I'm going to get on out of here, get some more stuff done. Enjoy the baseball series tonight. Launches against Mississippi State 7 if you're listening on the podcast. Again, that may be a little bit outdated, but our interview with Coach Dennis Thomas will not. Great insight there. So, all right, appreciate everybody for coming in. Appreciate our sponsor, Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, ClintHammond.com. Make sure you give him a call, and really appreciate everybody for being in and for the kind words. So we will be back on Monday is the plan right now. Again, still Monday, Wednesday, Friday. My partner in crime, Wes Mitchell, will be back at that time. So thanks everybody so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.